welcome back to Sextras,
where we talk about sex and all the extras.
I'm Honey.
And I'm Maria.
And today we're talking about attachment styles.
Finally!
My favourite topic of conversation.
Literally what we bring up every single week, and now it's finally getting its own episode.
Yeah, it deserves it. It really deserves it. It deserves all the episodes. We're very excited.
It gets a little bit of spotlight every single episode.
Yeah, exactly. A little sprinkling, like a trail of breadcrumbs to this very episode. What zone are you in today? Please tell.
Yeah, before we get into this exciting episode. Well, I'm feeling in the yellow zone. I'm feeling so excited because I'm gonna see my boyfriend and we're gonna like spend this weekend together. I mean, like, not that special, but it's like gonna be like a special weekend because it's our 3 years. So I'm just like, it's tomorrow, so cute. I'm just no, it's not our 3 years tomorrow, but like he's coming tomorrow, so you know, I'm getting like, it's getting to that point where it's like I need it to happen now. And it's kind of like, okay, everything that happens today is irrelevant.
What do you mean? What
you know, just to give you guys a little teaser of what's to come. That was such an anxious attachment thing to say from me. So, you know, just to give you a little taste of what I experience as an anxiously attached person.
I thought you were securely attached now.
But yeah, super excited and just feeling really happy because I've spent 3 years with my boyfriend now. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy times.
Yeah. But what about you?
I'm feeling quite... I don't really know. Like blue, grey, green, white, all of those ones. Like the kind of ambivalent,
like, gross little brown mix.
Yeah, it's all just a bit. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, just living.
Okay. So just not
really vibing with anything or anyone. I'm not that bothered by dating right now or sex, to be honest. Like, if it happens, that's fine with me, but
but it's not like a white.
No,
because what you just said really gave me white vibes. But
yeah, well, no, it is a bit like white green vibes, but it's also a bit more like more negative than that. Like, I think I'm just a bit like overwhelmed because I have so much to do because I'm going away in like a week, and I don't think I realised how much I have to do, and I'm just overwhelmed. Everyone wants to see me. I'm so popular, so I'm like a bit busy, you know. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
That's that. But should we get into the very exciting episode?
Let's do it.
Okay. Obviously, we should preface this episode by saying we are not psychologists or experts necessarily, although I would consider myself an expert on this topic, but I have no qualifications whatsoever other than the fact that I just like to read as much about it as I can. And we're basically just gonna like run through each attachment style kind of like from the research that we've done, our own knowledge, and just like tell you how each one manifests, how it like is formed as well, and like a few tips for how to help solve it or whatever. So obviously, like, don't take everything we say as like the holy grail, but there's just a little intro to attachment styles. Basically, if you don't know what yours is, or you don't really know what attachment styles are, or you're like, why the fuck do I need to know about this, we're just gonna put all of everything we've said for the last like 18 months about attachment styles into one episode to show you why we really think it's important for you to know your attachment style.
And just like big disclaimer also, to really, if you're like interested in this and like interested in how it's manifesting in you and like how to sort out all your attachment behaviors and all of that shit, like really like you have to seek therapy and like an expert. Like don't, or like or like listen to lots of podcasts and like you know what I mean, like you're not gonna get like your guide here on like how to fix your life, you know. Obviously that's not gonna happen. I feel like that goes without saying, but yeah, if you're interested, definitely like there's many resources out there, and like obviously the biggest resource is actually like talking to a therapist and unpacking like all of that shit. But yeah
or like we'll put some recommendations of like resources that you can use in the description, because we have a lot that will be helpful. So yeah, let's get into it. Maria,
let's do it.
Is gonna start with her very own attachment style.
Yeah, so I'm gonna talk to you guys a little bit about anxious attachment. So let me hold on.
I feel like we're like doing a presentation at school.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Wait. So obviously, since I'm anxiously attached, I'll tell you guys a little bit about what it's like. You know, just my just what I experience on a day-to-day basis kind of thing. So yeah, it's generally formed like through an inconsistency in parenting, or like a parenting pattern. So like sometimes you'll get a lot of care and nurture and like a lot of just like positive sort of reassurance and you know, like the presentation of like I love you kind of thing. Yeah, and then sometimes you won't, like there won't be that sort of reassurance of love or whatever. And so this inconsistency is kind of like you just learn to not know what to expect, and it's always kind of like being in this anticipation of like, okay, like what parent am I gonna get this time, or like what kind of mood is this person gonna be in, like that kind of thing. Or also obviously from like abandonment issues, but I think I was listening to this person talk about it, and it's kind of like, yeah, abandonment issues can sort of like, it either leads to like anxious attachment where you're like clinging on for dear life, or like avoidant where it's like, okay, then like I can never get close to anyone again because like they'll leave me. So this is kind of, so like abandonment can kind of lead to this like clinging on, but anxious is the more clinging on kind of one.
Okay.
And then yeah, sometimes it can come from like overbearing or overprotective parents, like parents that kind of generally have like anxious attachment themselves, so they have a lot of this like clinginess or like dependability, and it's like a lot of the time can be like even more than just overprotective, overbearing. It can be like literally those parents that sort of like base their whole like life and meaning around their kid, and it almost in a like I'm putting this on your shoulders kind of way. So like an anxious attachment kind of parent. So yeah, that can lead to a lot of fucked up behaviors and like thoughts, and it's kind of in the name, it's a lot of anxiety and a lot of worrying. So yeah, I mean, like I think the main thing I think for anxiously attached people, like the main thing, the way it shows up is like they want reassurance, and like they want like reassurance that they're worthy, that they're loved, and all of these things, which like I think everyone in the world wants. Like I don't think that that's just unique to anxiously attached people, but there's like, for secure people for instance, like they'll have these wants of like being like reassured that they're loved and cared for, and they'll look around in their relationship and be like, oh yeah, like this shows me that they like, this gives me that reassurance, all of these like things that aren't necessarily just like verbally like, oh like trust me, I love you, and like you know, the constant reassurance. And they'll be like, cool, but for like an anxiously attached person like that proof just isn't enough. Like you need more than that. You need like the constant thing, and it's like a constant worrying and constant like, if you're not getting it, then you're in that state. And then like that's also like the really weird thing that if like you are with the person, then all of these feelings and all of these worries like subside, and like that person is the only person that's going to make all of this like disappear. So that obviously creates like this crazy like weird dependency, and like you kind of like need this person to be okay and like to be in a good mood. So
like your self-esteem comes from the other person rather than yourself, kind of thing.
Exactly. And so like, because it comes from like a deep fear of abandonment and rejection, like this also breeds this like suspicion almost of your partner, and that's not even suspicion in like, oh shit, they're like cheating on me. It's also suspicion in like when they say I love you, you just don't trust that, because you're suspicious that they like, you're suspicious of their words, like you just don't trust what they're saying. And it ultimately comes from like a really like low self-esteem, and like that's a big characteristic of like anxious attachment, having low self-esteem, and kind of like this low self-esteem, fear of abandonment, like interact with each other and like just feed off each other, and it just comes out in like being needy and like the suspicion. And it's almost like I feel like I've described it before, this whole like I genuinely don't believe like that my boyfriend or like my ex or like the relationships that I've been in and like I've like seriously committed to or whatever, is like there's always this deep like genuine belief that they'll never love me how I love them, and like they'll never love me as much as I love them. And I feel like that's the whole like, that's like literally a perfect example of literal anxious attachment. It's like you genuinely don't, you just don't believe it. What else? Oh yeah, and then so then all of this like neediness and clinginess isn't like, I feel like sometimes it's not even that, it's like you just become also preoccupied with the relationship. It's not even that you need like to be on top of them like physically or whatever, or like you need them to call you all the time. It's like when they're not calling you, or like when you're not with them, or when you're not texting or whatever, like it's still constantly what you're thinking about. And it might be like positive feelings or like positive thoughts, but more often than that is like you'll be like reading into the last text, like if they said like love you instead of I love you, it will be like, oh shit, like I've done something wrong, you know, like. And I know that sounds really ridiculous, but like it is like little things like that can like send you into a little spiral. And it just becomes like a big preoccupation. It's not even that you're like worrying all the time, it's like also their mood impacts your mood. So like if they're in a bad mood, then you're like, oh okay, like I have to fix this. And like even a lot of self-blaming, like a lot of like, okay, then like everything has to be about them. Like I feel like anxiously attached people, you think everything's about you, and it's like, oh, they're in a bad mood, it must mean like I did something wrong, or like it's because I did this, when a lot of the time it has nothing to do with you, and like they're literally in a bad mood, but then you're like, okay, I have to fix this because like that's what love is or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it just, you know, it's just this crazy thing. And
exhausting.
Sorry, I feel like I'm like really talking a lot, but it really is like a roller coaster of emotions essentially. And and so wait, what else? There is like, as much as there's like a craving of like spending time with them, it's also like a craving of like emotional closeness. So any distance really, like physical, emotional, anything, it's like it's bad. And I mean, we'll get into it, but like because that's like a lot of like how avoidants deal with like the soothing of their like attachment behaviors, like they kind of have to like move away from it kind of thing. Then it's like this cycle of like, fuck, like, you know, one is moving away but the other one like is needing them to pull closer, and that's making them pull even further away. So but
fun times.
It's very like a lot of catastrophizing, a lot of like life or death kind of thing. Like it can either be like the best feeling of like when you're with them and everything's soothed, and then it's just like the complete opposite scale, and it's like for me it's like my mind always just goes immediately to like worst case scenario kind of thing. It's always like in some of the examples I was thinking about, it's like they don't send you a good night text, and to me it's like just immediately like, oh, okay, like they literally just weren't thinking about me, like they don't love me anymore. Like it's always like they don't love me anymore. Or like sometimes it'll be like they're cheating on me, or like, you know, it will go to like the worst over like this tiniest little things. So it's not fun. That's kind of my overview of like what it's like, how it presents itself. So yeah, if that sounds familiar, you might be anxiously attached. If that sounds familiar because you've dated someone that like it's kind of giving you like, oh wow, my ex was so like that, it's because they're anxiously attached. And it's kind of, I find it really sad like, because like it's rooted in this very like love me like kind of place, but it leads to so much like self-torment almost from like nothing, as I said. Like your partner can really do nothing, and like, or be like so loving, like I said, like all of these signs of reassurance and proof of reassurance, like you're just almost blind to it. So it's just really sad.
It's tragic.
But yeah, it's the life I'm living. Do you want to give us a little contrast and give us a breakdown of avoidant? I talked a lot. I'm really sorry.
No, I feel like it's good to get all the angles. But I was gonna say, like you're saying, it's super sad. I wanted to acknowledge as well that there's like this stereotyping of attachment styles. Like when you think of anxious people, you think of like women typically, and when you think of avoidant people, which I'm about to get into, you'd think like men, which, you know, I'm just like breaking gender stereotypes. But yeah, obviously it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. So, and I also feel like it's quite harmful, that idea, because then it's like, oh, every girl is like the crazy ex-girlfriend or whatever, and she's just like anxiously attached, you know, like stop being mean to her, she just wants some love, and you're probably just like a avoidant piece of shit who's making it worse. So
actually there's the most single people like are avoidant, like the most people out there are avoidant, and then anxious, and then secure. Well, like 50% of people are secure, and 50% are insecure, which is either avoidant, anxious, or fearful, which we will get into. Okay, so let's get into the avoidant attachment style, which, as you may already know, I have. So basically it's formed by like parents being disapproving of your displays of emotion in childhood. So you might be like super happy and like excited, and they'll be like, that's inappropriate, stop doing that. Or you might be crying and they tell you to stop crying. Also, I feel like we should acknowledge as well that when we say these things about like parenting and how it forms attachment styles, a lot of the time it can just be the tiniest like moment. It doesn't have to be like a consistent thing, because when you're a child, any like slight trauma, like when we think of trauma as adults, it has to be this huge life-changing event, but when you're a child, everything is so new and has such an impact on your development that like the smallest, tiniest thing, if it happens like twice, that can really affect your attachment style. So it's not necessarily this huge thing. So yeah, it can be parents kind of just like dismissing you, or in a family where people don't really discuss their emotions, you can pick up, obviously children pick up a lot on like stress and other people's emotions around them. Like they can feel what people are feeling even if it's not spoken about. I've heard of like people picking up on feelings from like within the womb, because obviously you get all like the hormones and all of the stress signals within the womb, so you feel like your mother's stress and stuff, and that can make you avoidantly attached, which is kind of wild if you think about it. That affects your whole life, like. True.
Yeah, so fun times, really. Basically, you learn is like not a positive thing to express emotions, which leads directly into what?
Sorry, and I swear you can also like develop attachment styles and like attachment behaviors or whatever, like in like early relationships, as in like romantic relationships, or like even if like, for instance, like in terms of like the whole abandonment thing, if like in a relationships you feel like someone abandons you when it's like a pivotal moment or like a really big life change or something like that, that like that can also impact it. Like it doesn't, like a lot of it does come specifically like from your childhood, and as you were saying, like because you're so sensitive, like any little action like will impact a lot. But like it can, you know, be from like later on in life. Sorry to have interrupted.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I feel like that's important. It's like there's like natural attachment style, which is like your from your childhood, but then it can also be learned and like change as well. Like you can fix your attachment style and become secure, or you can be secure and become like insecure, basically. So yeah. So then how does it manifest? The fun part. Basically you like get stressed out by emotional closeness, so literally the opposite to anxious attached, and you find it really difficult to express emotions, you really value your independence, you also, as opposed to like anxious attached, you have a very high self-esteem because you like have all this independence, but you find it really hard to like interact with other people emotionally. Like if they get too close to you, you'll probably try and push them away. If you're in a relationship, you'll want to have a lot of personal space. If people want to have like conversations about emotions or like the relationship with you, you'll see that as them like trying to suffocate you and like take over your life and try and get further and further away and just avoid conflict as much as possible. And there's also this thing where like, because in the relationship your avoidant attachment style is so triggered by the relationship, there's this thing called like the phantom ex phenomenon, where once you break up with someone and you get that emotional distance, you'll then realize all of the like good aspects of the relationship because you don't have that proximity, and then you'll start to like romanticize this person and think of them as like amazing, even though if you were actually together you probably would be trying to push them away again. So it's all very confusing. Basically you do have the feelings obviously, but you're just like so uncomfortable sitting with those feelings because of like what you've learned about how emotions should be processed and shown, that like when it happens you just like try and flee. You're basically, it triggers your fight or flight response and you're just like running away from all your feelings. So it makes it really, as you can probably imagine, really difficult to like form attachments to people. So yeah, exactly the opposite of anxiously attached people, which is great because the next fun fact of the day is that anxious people and avoidant people tend to be very attracted to one another, because everyone knows that like you repeat patterns that you've learned, you repeat things that have happened to you in the past, so you're always seeking something to fulfill your own idea of yourself. So avoidant people will, because they like, ultimately you do want that, like it's natural to want connections, but you'll look for other people to like fulfill that emotional neediness, even though you don't actually like it in your brain. And anxious people will be looking for avoidant people even though it really triggers their attachment style. Also, another thing I've got to say about avoidance is that you like don't know how to act when other people display emotions. So you're anxious, a partner your anxious partner might be like displaying all of this like neediness and clinginess, as you were saying, and you'll just be like, the fuck are you doing? Like, why are you being like this?
Dude, Honey's literally like texted me like, sorry, I don't know if I can say this, we can cut it out if not, but like she's texted me like one time when her boyfriend was crying and she was like, I was just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, honestly, like literally that exact fucking symptom of your disease.
Ooh, diseased being. Yeah.
But yeah, and I feel like I've felt that whole like why are you crying kind of judgment as well.
No, I try so hard.
Sorry.
I try so hard to like not judge people because I'm like, okay, it's just crying, it's just crying, it's just crying. But really, I'm just like, freak. Anyway, so should we talk a bit? Obviously, we can't give like concrete advice, but like from our own experience, like how to undo it. And also, like, it's not just our own experience. Like, this is what I've kind of done because it's, like, what I've read about being advised, obviously. So, like, but it's, like, not direct research that we have done.
Well, we found out. What we found out from the experts on the internet. and on Attached.
Oh, yeah.
We can show them.
This is the holy grail.
Well, the ones who are watching on video.
Yeah. It's called Attached. Are you anxious, avoidant, or secure? How the science of adult attachment can help you find and keep love. Would highly recommend you read this.
Yeah.
When I had like 2 therapy sessions once, my therapist kept like recommending attachment style books to me, and I was like, mate, I've read all of them already. Like, I got them right here. I pulled out the stack and showed her, and she was like, okay. Anyway, so yeah, so for avoidant people, like how to fix it, as I was saying, you feel very like uncomfortable sitting with the feeling, so a big thing is just like really breathing. Like, it sounds so stupid.
Sorry, maybe before you get into like specifically, I think like overview, just like working on attachment styles as a whole, like it's gonna take time and it's gonna take patience, and there's no like overnight cure kind of thing. It is like a very much looking inward and like working on yourself and like looking at patterns and trying to break them, so like that takes effort and like attention and time. So like all of these tips are going to be kind of along those lines. There's not going to be anything that's like, oh, just like read this and then when you wake up, like you'll be better, like you'll be secure.
I wish.
But yeah, anyway, sorry, tell us like some tips on how to sort of fix it, avoidant attachment.
Well, I was going to say, just to like add to your point, is like you probably can't do it by yourself. Like, either get a therapist. I mean, I'm sure you can probably do it without a therapist if that isn't available to you, but it is very like dependent on your partner. Obviously, if you're trying really hard to fix your attachment style and your partner is just like, oh, whatever, I don't really care, and their attachment style is triggering yours, like if they're secure, then it's like they're probably not going to be saying they don't care, first of all, and also they'll try and help you. But if their attachment style triggers yours, then you kind of both need to be trying to fix this together, because otherwise it's just going to continue the cycle. And like, obviously that comes with finding the right partner, which is a lot harder to do than like it seems, but yeah. So anyway, avoidant attachment style, how to fix it, is just really sitting with your feelings. And obviously that sounds really stupid and like, what is that gonna do? But because you really struggle to acknowledge your own feelings, a lot of the time it can be like dissociating, as I was saying with the fight or flight response. You just need to, like, instead of avoiding conflict, have those really difficult conversations with your partner. Don't say, oh, let's talk about this later, or this isn't the time, or you're being ridiculous, this isn't a big deal. You have to like try to be empathetic, and don't confuse your independence with interdependence, because obviously it's really important to be an independent person.
Can you expand on what that means, because I'm slightly confused, so just, you know.
So independent, so obviously, yeah, it's like really important to be an independent person. That's what everyone strives to be, and that means like having your own interests, being your own person, having your own job, not relying on other people for like every single aspect of your life. But in relationships, interdependence is the like healthy thing that you want to look for, rather than codependence. Because it means that you have like healthy connections with people, you rely on people the right amount, you don't like basically everything that we're trying to avoid with these insecure attachment styles, you know, like not too much codependence and not too much independence or like pushing people away. It's just the right amount. So yeah, just having those really difficult conversations and recognizing that for the relationship to even work in the first place, you need to recognize both people's emotions, whether you think the other person's emotions are ridiculous or not. Like, this is a big thing that I learned in my last relationship. It's just like, I might think that their emotions are completely over the top and ridiculous as a response to the situation, but if you love them, you need to give them the space to process that, and then in return they will give you the space to process your own feelings. And also, like, for me personally, it has helped to just kind of like explain how I feel when conflict arises. And I think like both sides can do that. The anxious and avoidant side is like, this is how I feel when you act this way, just using like very objective I language rather than like big emotional words. Just saying, I feel very overwhelmed when you express this like need for me to be around all the time. And that's something that comes up with like fixing avoidant attachment styles as well, is probably the need to have like this personal space is probably not going to go away even as you fix your attachment style, because you become so used to it, which I'm like, oh, so glad about that one. But like but yeah, like just saying, look, I really need this space because I understand that you as the anxious partner need to feel emotional closeness to me, and I want to give that to you, but in order for me to give that to you, I need this personal space to like reset and be able to give it to you. And yeah, like just basically reassuring them, but also reassuring yourself in a way of like, it's okay to feel these feelings, like you're good, it's safe, this is a safe space, and you're working on it together. And that's where I think the aspect of working on it together makes it like really important, basically. So yeah, what about anxious attachment?
Yeah, I think it's kind of what I would like, the tips that I have are very similar to what you said, just kind of the other side of it, but it is still just like having a conversation about it. And like, so yeah, once you acknowledge like these sort of like thoughts that you have, or like these patterns, and like a lot of the times there'll be just these like anxious thoughts or worries, and like I think for anxiously attached people that's even like harder, because you don't want to bring up like, a lot of the time you find, so there's kind of this like two-way street, right? Like there's this idea of like starting a lot of fights and like a lot of drama because like there's this need for attention and whatever, and like when your true need is like for attention or like more affection from your partner, but instead you like act out and you like pick all these fights or whatever. Or there's like, you have all these worries and all of this stuff that like is genuinely making you feel like quite uneasy and like unhappy, but you don't want to bring it up because you're like, everything will be easier if I don't bring it up, and like I don't want to cause any trouble. So I think like it can be quite hard to like first like identify what your actual need is, because like a lot of the time that gets like over flooded by the worrying, and like you start to see negative things and like pick at like the wrong thing almost. Like, yeah, I'll start like a whole argument about like why he didn't call me like for this amount of time, but when realistically like what I'm upset about is like I haven't felt close to him, or you know what I mean. So it's like, I think it's like you have to identify what the real need is, and then after you've done that, kind of like, and talking to your partner can help with that conversation. Like, you can be like, hey, listen, like I've been having all these like weird like worries and thoughts, and I'm like, when you don't text me goodnight, it makes me start to think like that you're not thinking about me, and then that means that you don't love me, and that you like will leave or whatever, you know, like really go through it, like as crazy as it sounds. And like you can even phrase it like, I know that this is like not completely rational, but this is the thought that I've been having, and like how can we like talk about that, and just like, can we like talk about this, and then try to reach some sort of like, set some sort of boundary and set some sort of like rule, and try to see how that goes, kind of thing. Like, okay, so I think it would be really nice if you text me, like, I think it would be really helpful if you text me goodnight just before you go to bed. Like, even if we don't talk the rest of the day, like, I know that I'm gonna get that goodnight text from you. And is that something you think you could do? Yeah. It's like, yeah, that's something I think I could do. Or like, no, that's not realistically something I could do because I don't sleep with my phone in my room. You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay, then how about before you put your phone away, you just like send me a text to let me know. Yeah. And like, you know, talk about it like from a place of like, okay, where can we like both kind of like have our needs met and be happy, and like, yeah, you won't always reach that like perfect solution or perfect medium or whatever. And I feel like that's when then like the like self-soothing, and like you have to sort of like really sit down and kind of like try to, as like for you, for avoidant people, you were saying like sit down with your emotions and thoughts, but I think maybe sit down and like kind of have like a rational pile versus like what you're feeling. So like the feeling is like, he hasn't texted me back, so he's cheating on me or whatever, you know what I mean? And then in the rational pile you have like, he hasn't texted me back because he's in the shower. Like you know, try to like give your anxious attachment thoughts like a rational path to go down. And a lot of the time that will be like really hard, because you can't like, when you have the rational thoughts like there, you still have those feelings, and I understand that. But the more that you can like differentiate them and like start to go down the like rational path, like, and the more you practice it, the more like that will just become like natural.
And also like on the flip side of that, for avoiding people, is like, okay, why is this person crying? Like, this is inappropriate or whatever. Like, come up with like an emotion to match that. And it's like, okay, I understand that they're feeling distressed, or like, I feel sympathetic to, like, tell yourself right now, I am feeling sympathetic towards them because they are my partner and I love them and I don't want them to be upset. And then maybe you'll like, you know, trigger some like emotional response in yourself. And like, I also think it's really sad that anxious people like feel like they need to rationalize their feelings, because I don't think that's like a nice way to live your life. Like, as someone who rationalizes my feelings literally constantly, it's not the funnest thing. And like, it is important to feel your feelings. And that's also another thing of like avoidant attached people, is that they are sadly like shamefully the ones in control in the relationship, because I think what comes with avoidant attachment styles is this like, I'm better because I can see how the situation really is because I'm on the outside, even though you're not really on the outside. You know, it's like, because I have the benefit of like being able to step away and being independent, and they're the ones that are like clingy and stuff, which is like not fair on either person in the relationship. And so talking about it, and like everything always just comes back to communication, which is so fucking annoying, but it's fine, we'll get there eventually.
I mean, another thing I guess is sort of like going back to this idea of, for anxious attached people, like the proof or whatever isn't enough. It's sort of just like, look at that proof and examine the ways in which like your partner is actually showing you like all the things that you are searching for, or the ways in which they aren't, maybe. But then I guess you can like, you know, is this like just in my head kind of, is this like my anxious attachment lying to you, which it will lie to you a lot, like it's a big fat liar. It's kind of like, if you have anxiety, well, I guess it's in the name, but but if you're someone that's experiencing anxiety and like these sort of like idea of intrusive thoughts and stuff, like it can feel a little bit like that sometimes. So
yeah,
I guess it's just picking out those lies and not believing them.
Yeah, definitely.
But that takes practice and time.
Yeah, also I think it's like important for like avoidant people, even in like non-romantic situations, to kind of like recognize those things as well. Like, I mean, not necessarily non-romantic, but like if you're not necessarily dating, just be like, how am I treating this person, and like what feelings are coming up for me in like even the slightest possibility of like a romantic situation, of like what are your feelings around intimacy, basically, like why am I freaking out if like this person might like me, kind of thing, you know, and then being like, okay, let's treat this other person with compassion, you know. And that's something I always feel really bad about, like after a breakup or like after I end something, or like rejecting people, because I'm like why, like I don't like how I act in those situations, you know, like that's not how I want to be as a person, but that's just like how I am triggered to be, and I'm just like really trying to unlearn it because I don't want to be a mean, like unsympathetic person.
Yeah. The villains.
Yeah. Basically, we're always the villains. Then you're always the victim.
Yeah. Poor us.
But yeah, okay, well, let's touch briefly. I want to like just acknowledge fearful attachment, which is like basically a mixture of avoidant and anxious, and it's characterized by inconsistency. So it's like just very incoherent attachment. Like you either crave, like you both crave emotional closeness, like anxious people, but also get freaked out when it's shown to you or when you receive it, and you're like suspicious of it, basically. So it's a combination of the two. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. We don't really have to go into that much detail. It's basically another insecure attachment style, and if you like identify with aspects of what we both said, then you might be fearfully attached, or it's like called disorganized attachment style. You can go do a little attachment style quiz on the internet and it will tell you your breakdown of which one you most are, or like you can just, you know.
Yeah, we'll leave the one that we like in the description, and it gives you like literal breakdown of how much percentage of each attachment style you have, because I guess we're not everyone's gonna be, you know, like a straight a narrow version of one, like we're all a mixture of things, kind of thing.
Yeah. And then there's secure attachment as well, obviously, which is like, okay, good for you. Which is basically you don't have any problem forming emotional attachment to people. It doesn't necessarily mean you're an amazing person, but it just means like you can have healthy relationships and it's not difficult for you, which is always just the goal and what everyone with insecure attachment is striving towards, basically. So
yeah, and I mean a big tip, like in this research that we have done, is like if you do have insecure attachment, is to get into a relationship with someone with secure attachment.
Yes.
And then, you know, hopefully that will like steer your exactly like and steer you more in that direction, and you'll kind of like slowly but surely move into secure attachment, obviously if you like work on it too. But so yeah, find yourself a secure person.
50% of the population on. You can do it.
Yeah, but the thing is, a lot of people that are secure, they're like in relationships because like they're good to go and fine and not broken. No, I'm joking, we're not broken, guys.
Yeah, but also like you might meet a secure person and be like, this isn't like right for me because it doesn't feel like your idea of intimacy, which is just like, fuck's sake. I really like the analogy of like, if you get into if you have an insecure attachment style and you get into a relationship with another person who has an insecure attachment style, it's like this boxing match of like like you're both punching at each other basically. But if you get into a relationship with like a secure person, it's like you're just punching them and they're just like deflecting it, and then eventually you'll just like get tired and be like, cool, I don't care anymore. And then you'll like be secure as well. You know. So yeah, but I mean, if there's like two avoidant people dating, it will just be like no one will even come to the fucking match. The ring will be empty. But yeah, so those are like our little tips, our little overviews, but let's talk a bit about why it is helpful to know your attachment style. And I mean, if we didn't already sell you with those like that overview, like why would you not know that? I can't think of a single person who would like listen to that and be like, I don't identify with any of those, you know? Because like it's useful to know. Obviously we always fucking push reflection on the podcast and just like understanding your own role in relationships, and I think people find it so easy to just like go about their lives like, oh haha, it's so funny that like this is classic me, you know, like everyone falls in love with me but I just like I'm not into them, like that was literally me. And then I was like, but why, like what's wrong with me? And then I started hearing about attachment styles, and it's just kind of crazy to me that the whole, literally every way that you act in a relationship has been written down as the attachment style. It's you're such a cliche of the attachment style, which is so unfortunate. But yeah, it's just like it can be so easily described, and you might be going about your life like, oh, why are all my relationships like not successful? And this is just such an easy way to understand why it's that way. Like look at how that's happened and like how you are playing up to that, and then also just like ways to kind of fix it and like unlearn those things. So yeah, I don't know, do you have like any thoughts on why, like what kind of stood out to you when you learnt about attachment styles?
Well, yeah, I think as I said a little bit earlier, I spent so much of my like first relationship, or like even my second relationship, like just being like, oh, this is the way I am, and like I'm just the kind of person that like I'm only ever gonna fall in love with someone that I know doesn't love me back, and like that's just the kind of people I'm attracted to, like those people that like don't give me quite enough like the attention that I want, or you know what I mean? Like it was always this like, yeah, it was, I don't know, I kind of didn't think that it was like a me problem. I just thought that was just the way that I was, and like the people that I was being attracted to and whatever. Yeah. And like, why do I always, why am I convinced that I will never like that no one will ever love me how I love them? Yeah. And it's like quite a sad thing to like kind of just accept about yourself and just be like, yeah, this is just the way it is. And then when I like learnt about it and like reading about it more, and like the way that I like kind of connect those dots, and like, because sometimes you'll read something and you're like, oh, but that's not me, like that's not exactly me. Yeah. Like, yeah, I can see what they're getting at, but that's not exactly like, that hasn't happened exactly to me. So but then once you start to like, you know, reinterpret that and like connect those dots and like work through it, it just makes a lot more sense, and the things that you do and the thoughts that you think make a lot more sense. And like it has allowed me, which like I just feel like it's a huge relief, from separating like I'm not worthy and genuinely believing that, to like, okay, that's not true. Like, so I feel like it makes like a complete difference in like just the way, and even if I am still having those thoughts, like at least now I can separate it, as I keep saying. So I think that's like definitely the biggest thing. And yeah, just like it's just helped me a lot in like not feeling all those worries and all of these things, because now I can like put a name to it, and I can point to it, and I can like go to my boyfriend and be like, this is like what I've been thinking, like what I've been feeling, and it's not like such a big worry of like, shit, I really can't bring this up because I don't even know what it is, like I don't even know how I'm feeling or like what this means. But now it's like, okay, I actually can, and like now I can start moving towards like not feeling this way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really, it's made a difference. And like I know, we were talking about it at the start of the episode, like I did joke about the whole like how I was like, oh yeah, now I'm like all fixed and whatever, but like it genuinely, like I feel like since I found out about them, and not really a moment before, like I have been kind of like moving towards a more secure attachment. And like I'm definitely like way further along than I was when I found out about it. Like I'd be interesting to do the quiz, because when I did the quiz I got basically like I got like 15% or something like avoidant fearful or something like that, and then like 55% anxious preoccupied, and then like the rest secure. So I literally like nearly 0% avoidant and like then the rest anxious, essentially. And now I just feel like it would have moved a lot further towards the secure side, but obviously I don't know, maybe I'm just choosing my own horn, but yeah.
No, yeah, I feel like you've come a long way.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is the thing, is like relationships are literally our whole lives, whether it's like with your romantic partner, or like if you're single, which clearly I am, or like with your parents or whatever, like your family. And this is why we do the podcast, because it's like relationships are everything. They affect your emotional well-being so much, and you can have so much turmoil like going about your life, like I just don't feel these things, like why do I not feel anything, why can I not like sustain emotional connections, why do I always need to like have personal space? And then it's just like such a simple answer of like, well, I mean, it's not really simple, but it's like, there's this reason, here's the information, and like do with it what you will. And if you want it to get better, then you can like work on it with your partner, you can have these conversations with your parents. Like I've had conversations with my mum about attachment styles, and like it was like kind of sometimes it was a bit awkward, because it's like when we were saying at the beginning like how the attachment styles are formed, it can sound very like blamey and like pointing fingers, but once you understand like the dynamic of your family and how it's passed down, as Maria was saying, anxious kids tend to get it from like anxious parents, and it's just passed on, and you understand that they went through that as well. And like you might have all these like ideas of your parents in your head, but like then it helps you approach their upbringing with like compassion as well, and then understand like certain things from your childhood that like potentially you didn't even realize had like been carried along with you for this long. And it's kind of the cliche of therapy, like, oh, go to therapy and talk about your childhood, and no one really wants to do that. But I really like wholeheartedly believe that so much can be solved if you do. And I just don't get why you wouldn't want to have like a very pleasant relationship with your family and romantic partners especially.
Yeah, I mean, that's where all the shit is at, that's where it's all stored, and it needs to be unlocked and like killed to move forward.
Bit dramatic. But yeah, so yeah, as I was saying, like I am single, and dating as an avoidant person is like a big issue that I am grappling with at the moment, of like I just don't think that I need to be in a relationship. But then I'm like, do I hate dating, or am I just very, very avoidant is my big question of the moment. Because I'm like, I don't really have time for people, but realistically, if I found someone that I really, really liked, which is rare, but if that did happen, I would make the time for them. And like, should I be looking for that? And I'm like, I don't even know if that's what I want, or if that's just like my avoidant mind telling me that that's not what I want and that's not what I need. So it's very conflicting. And then also in my Hinge profile, I have a prompt about attachment styles, and people will always just message me their attachment style. Well, they'll either message me their attachment style, or they'll be like, what's an attachment style? And I'm like, okay, well, we're not gonna match.
Okay,
then.
so the queue of who, the yes and the no gets narrowed.
Bye. But if people message me their attachment style, I'm like, okay, interesting, cool. Like, let's have a conversation about this.
Are most people that are messaging you avoidant, anxious, secure?
Anxious mainly.
Oh, really?
This fucking anxious avoidance cycle. Honestly, it's a trap. Like, get out of that as soon as you fucking can. And I'll always be like, I think I do it without even knowing anything about them. Of like, it's always the people that I think are really cute or like that I'm interested in the most, we match, and then we're talking about attachment styles, and then they're always anxious, and I'm like, is it just like destiny drawn together without even meaning to, but yeah. So I don't really have any tips about that, but I kind of just wanted to like acknowledge the fact that it can be super difficult. And also, like, I can imagine, like, on the flip side, as an anxious person as well, of like, I bet that anxious people get labeled a lot in the dating process of like, oh, they're like way too into it, and like they're so needy and they need all these things that like I shouldn't have to give them, or like I don't want to give them, and it's a bit intense. But this is again like why it's so important to just have these conversations early on, I think, and just like, if you're interested in each other, like try and work on it together, or just like have an understanding of where the other person is coming from, rather than just like labeling them and being like, oh, fuck this, I don't have time for this, because then you'll just go find someone that isn't like that, and then just keep like with the cycle that isn't helping you in any way. So yeah, but I mean, it's a lot easier said than done, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, when I dated someone who was also like anxiously attached, it didn't like seem to help, which is kind of the crazy thing. Like, maybe it did in retrospect, but like even having someone that feels those same things and are constantly like craving that emotional closeness and like all of those things, like it still just wasn't enough. I just feel like it's one of those things that like, no matter how big the suitcase that you get when you pack, like, you'll fill it up, like, it's just like, like, no matter what, like, it's not gonna be enough, because it's like,
the problem is with you, not
exactly. So yeah, I mean, I don't really know what that has to do with anything, but I just thought that was an interesting thought to, the contrast between the like avoidant anxious cycle. I just feel like, at least as an anxiously attached person, like it didn't really help. You still feel those feelings, unfortunately, in some ways, like even more, like it was even more like extreme, because I guess since it was two people, first of all, and then second of all, because like we were always together, then like the moments that we really weren't together, like that was like even tenfold, like this whole like catastrophe of us not being together. But yeah, I mean, also, sorry to just like be throwing out flying tips over here also, but like I think genuinely this might sound kind of crazy, but I think if you're anxiously attached and you like really are looking to work on your relationship and your attachment style, like feel like, it's a form of immersion therapy. Like, you should try long distance. Like,
I knew you were gonna say that. I was
sorry,
so
I know
excited.
I keep promoting it, but like, I just feel like it genuinely like really helped me in terms of getting like this whole independence aspect, and like this whole like separating like having this need to like know what they're doing all the time, and like what, like who they're with, and like all of this shit. Like, I just feel like it is like, as I said, like all of this you just have to practice it and practice it and practice it until it becomes like, until you rewrite the pattern, essentially. So I feel like it's a good way to just like have to practice it, essentially. But yeah, my last little tip, I guess.
Well, on that note, we did some polls like a very long time ago now, but I'd be interested to just like see how it relates to everything we've just talked about. So we asked our followers if you know your attachment style, And 45% of people said yes, and 55% of people said no.
Okay, 50-50. That's pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. So I'm like quite impressed, because I feel like when I meet people, most people are like, what is that?
Yeah, you know? Yeah.
Or maybe it's just me being like, let me tell you about attachment styles.
To be fair, it is our followers. Like, yeah, if it wasn't high, like...
I mean, we do constantly talk about it, so... yeah, fair.
But definitely find out about it, guys. You know, encourage that number to go up. Maybe we should do another one later on and find out what the difference is, if more people know it now.
Yeah,
sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, we can put the link to the quiz below, so it will be 100% yes.
Yeah. Okay, and then we also asked, do you know your partner's attachment style? And then 33% of people said yes, so that number dropped, which... understandable, you know, know your shit before you get invested in someone else. I bet those 33% of people are anxious.
Yeah.
Anxiously attached people.
Or just me.
But yeah, do you know your ex's attachment styles?
Yes, I do.
And did you think, like, during the relationship?
Oh, during the relationship. My most recent ex, I made him do a quiz while we were dating. He was very reluctant, which tells you what his attachment style was. And my other ex, surprised by her attachment style, really, because I asked her recently, because I was like, oh, do you know? Because I was at her house and I was like having a literal hour-long conversation with one of her friends about his attachment style. But yeah, she told me, and I was like, I was expecting it to be anxious, but it wasn't. So I was like, interesting. Very interesting. But yeah, what about you?
Yeah, no, I didn't know my exes at the time, and I also asked my boyfriend to do a quiz. But yeah, did you find that knowing your ex's, like, attachment style at the time, like when you found out about it and stuff, like, did it help? Or
yeah. Yeah.
in what ways? Just in, like, understanding what was happening?
Yeah, I feel like it was just made a lot more sense to be able to put labels to it, and like kind of explaining to him what my attachment style as well was just like, okay, so this is why I like get so freaked out when you show emotions, and like this is how I feel in those situations where we have serious conversations, because it was kind of like at the point of our relationship where we're having a lot of serious conversations, so it was very intense for me. And he would like not understand why I was like super distant when we were having these conversations. I literally felt like I wasn't like present in the conversations because it freaked me out so much to be in them. And then understanding like how he reacted to that, and just trying to like talk those different sides through of like, how can we meet in the middle somewhere? And then it would be like, it actually did kind of help, like he would ask for like my permission to talk about, like not my permission, but you know, be like, is this a good time to have this conversation? And like give me a bit of warning before just like springing all this stuff on me. But I also feel like it did kind of like make it probably more difficult for him, which is not necessarily like what I wanted, because he had to be like, I felt like he felt like he had to apologize for his feelings in the moment, which wasn't what I was aiming for, but that's like kind of what came out of it. But I feel like if we had stayed in the relationship for longer, it probably would have helped, but because we didn't know at the beginning, and because there was like all of this complication at the time, then it wasn't like super helpful. Has it helped your relationship to know your partner's attachment style?
Yeah, I mean, he's like mostly secure and a bit avoidant, so like it did help obviously in those like understanding that there was going to be this like reluctance, like even just on top of like the reluctance that I feel like I already experienced because I'm so full on, like there's gonna be even more to like talk about. And he's like quite reluctant to talk about his feelings or like things like that, so I guess it just helped me be like knowing not to push and and yeah, to kind of stop myself in my tracks already, because I obviously didn't want to like continue that anxious avoidance cycle of like pushing, and then he like pulls away more. But he's also just not a very like like, as I said, he doesn't really talk about his feelings very much, so like I don't know, I feel like a lot of the stuff is more like to do with my attachment style and like me doing the work, and he's just kind of chilling, you know. So,
but I feel like that's like a very like stereotypical like male trait, you know, which is like goes with the avoidant attachment style.
That's the thing, it's like I don't know with him like what to just put as like he's just like that, or like he's just the guy, or he's avoidant, like he's, I don't know, you know, he's just like not a very like full of emotions kind of person.
Well,
which I guess is kind of good for me, because I'm like the opposite. So you know, I need someone to like stabilize me.
What would you do if one day he just turned around and was like as emotional as you?
Oh my god, I don't think I would like that. I think I would be really overwhelmed. But then again, I always constantly say like I'd love to have me as a girlfriend. I'd be like the perfect girlfriend. Like genuinely, like all the attention and assurance I need. All the time.
Maybe you should just date yourself.
I wish.
No, but okay, well, I'll give a little fun fact before we end the episode, because I was obviously, you know, doing some research for this episode, and I found out that secure attachment style makes you more likely to have a balance of like obviously like stereotypically masculine and feminine traits, so you like lean more towards androgyny as a secure person, because it's like you're not, you know, fueling all of these like super masculine traits, such as like not talking about stuff, you know, which is kind of interesting, I thought.
I think that's so interesting.
And also like kind of similarly, apparently fearful avoidant people are like most likely to be homophobic, which I feel like just really confirms the fact that like these binary like gender roles are just super toxic to everyone involved, which is kind of wild.
I was gonna say like the secure people are the only ones that are like I've understood that this whole gender thing is just not necessary.
They're just chilling, just living their best lives. But
thanks for that fact, hon.
You're welcome. And I feel like that's a lot. That was a lot of information, but
we've left lots of little attachment style Easter eggs like all over our episode, so at this point, I mean, we don't even have suggestions to go to specific ones. Just go through literally all of them, and you will find more stuff about attachment styles, and if not, we'll definitely like put some stuff in the description to have a look at and to do the quiz. But I hope you guys, you know, learned a little bit more about attachment styles, and maybe like learned something about yourself.
Also, I was gonna say, like, let us know if you guys want, because I feel like we're always talking about like these these mystical resources that we have, and we genuinely like read a lot of information and consume a lot of media about relationships and sex. So if you like would want us to put it all on the website, I feel like that could be helpful for some people, so let us know if that's something that you would want and like utilize, which you can do on our email address, which is sextruspodcast@gmail.com, or DM us on Instagram at sextruspodcast or Facebook at sextruspodcast. Send us a little anonymous confession about your attachment style life on the website, which is www.sextruspodcast.com. And we're excited to keep talking about attachment styles from now on. We hope we covered like most of your questions, or like filled in your gaps in your knowledge. And we will see you next week. Bye.
You've been listening to Sextras, presented by Honey Jane Wyatt and Maria Jose Hayodatiyi, produced by Mabel Productions.